What is up everybody, this is Aniket from Coded. In this video we'll create a text animation just like this one. Pretty cool, isn't it? So let's jump straight into it. Before starting the project, let me tell you that I'm on my code pen. So if you want the source code of this project, you can find the link of this pen in the description down below. Now to get started, I just have a font from Font Awesome, that is Oswald, and I have nothing. So now let's start some actual code with HTML. We'll create a paragraph and give it a class of title, and the text would be animation. You can add any text. And now here, before writing any code in CSS, what everyone must do is add some basic stylings to universal operator and to pseudo elements. And the styling should be padding of 0, margin of 0, box, I think border box, and any other stuffs that you would like to add there. Now in body, we'll first specify the height and width with 100 VH and 100%. And now I'll also add display flex, justify content, center, and at last align items, center to center everything in the middle like this. And I also want to give it a background of pure black, that is 000, and pure white FFF like this. Now next up is title. I'll add font size of be 5 rems and will capitalize each and every letter of that. I'll also change the family of this font to the one that I imported, that is Oswald, like this. Now we'll come back to CSS after we write some code in JavaScript. And in JavaScript what we do is we'll grab on our title with query selector. So we'll say document.querySelector title, and now we'll add title.innerHTML equals title.innerText. And what I'm doing here is I'm changing the HTML of this inner HTML of this title to what I'll do next. What I'm doing here is I'm grabbing on the inner text of title, and in this case it is animation now like this. And next, after grabbing these, I'll split it. And what split function does is it splits a thing in different parts. It separates the text. So if I use split here, and if I let's say I give space, then it is going to separate the text whenever it finds a space. But in this text we cannot find the space, so it will not split that. If I add I here, so what it is going to do here is it is going to find I, and then it is going to create two parts. Like before I, it is the first part, and after I, it is the second part. Here we have two I's. So before first I, it is going to be first part. After first I, it is going to be second part. And now when we move ahead, we see another I. So what we'll do is at that point we'll set the back, or we'll set whatever it had before this I to second part, and that the whatever we have after this I, the third part. And here you can see this output. Wherever it found I, it separated that in parts. So the part is separated with the comma here, and I is removed because we separated that from I. So I is removed, and instead of that we have added comma here. So when we added comma, so we can see that we have this as the first part, this as the second part, this as the third part, because we had an I here. If I would have written A here, then see here that we'll get a different thing. We get the first part, it is blank, the second part NIM, and the last part TION. But here what I want is I want to give a blank string. So it is going to separate each and every part. After this A, after this A, and before N, what we had? We had nothing. If we had to say what is after A and before N, in this case, then it is nothing. So I added nothing in this split function. It is going to separate the letters whenever we have this nothing. And I think you got that. Here here if you can directly see that whenever we have this comma, this is a separator. So here A is the first part and second I, and each and every letter has now gone to a separate part. And now after this we have splitted it, we want to give a map function. And what map function does is, if you want to like change, or if you want to add something in each and every item of an array or a string, like let me add a comment here and say like var arr, and if I use an array here like this, and let me get out of this array. So we have 5 items here, and if we use if you want to multiply each and every item of this array with 2, then what we can do is we can use this map function. And by that I mean to say that map function runs through each and every item of that array, and it means that if you want to do something to each and every item of that array, you can use map function. And yes, you can also do that using loops like for, while and for each, but map makes it much simpler, so that I'm using map function. So if I want to multiply each and everything with 2, each and every item with 2 in this array, what I can say that like arr.map, and here we can say item, and this item will refer to, this item refers to this each and every item of this array. So the first time this item is going to refer to this 1, the second time with 2, the third time 3, and so on. So I'll return, what I want to return is item times 2, and here we'll get a new array. That array will contain 2, 4, 6, 8 and 10, and this is the the new array, and here we return item times 2, and you get that, right? So this is what map function does. And here if I here I can say LTR, and this is each and every letter, like we have A, N, I, M, A, T, I, O and N. So these are the different letters that is going to come here in place of this letter, and we want to return, what we want to return, I'll write that in backtext. We want to return a span. Inside each and every span will have some text, and that text would be this letter, and this letter I told you it will be each and every item of that array, and the item is this one, like A, N, I, M, A, like these before and after commas. So this is what it is going to return in a span. And at last I want to join, like here also I'm joining, but when joining it is adding a comma by default. But here if I add just these commas, and let's say this one, this pipe operator, this pipe, not operator, this pipe, so it is going to add pipe in this bit in between. We can also add underscore, and it will add underscore in between like this one. But what I actually want is nothing, like this. Here we go, so we get nothing in between. Now let me log this to console by console.log to see exactly what we have. So we are adding this in the inner HTML of this title, so it shall work. Here in console, let me clear these out, and here it will run again. Here we go. So we have span tags, and we have each and every letter inside this span. And to spans, I want to add classes of letter to each, like this. And now let's come back to our CSS, and to CSS I'll add the letter class, and I'm adding that inside this title, so I can write it like this. Now letter, I want to add animation. In that animation it would be fade in, and I'm going to create this animation, and the duration would be 500 milliseconds, is and out, like this. And now let me add keyframes to create that animation. That would be fade in, and I want it from transform translate y1m, and opacity would be 0. So it is going to start with this, and it is going to end up with nothing that we had by default. The default values are, the translate is 0 and the opacity is 1, so that is default. Let me clear that console, and here if I save, it is going to reload once here, and we can see what we had. So it is animating, but you can see that only opacity animates and every letter animates at the single time, but we are going to fix that later. But what the concern should be now is it is only the opacity that is working. The transform translate is not working, and for that to work the display should be of a block, but here span has a display of inline. That is that is why we are not seeing that transform animation. So what we can do here is we can add transform inline. As by default we want to add inline block, and here we should get what we wanted. Here we go, but still everything animates at the very same time. So what I can do is I want delay to each and every letter. The first letter should get a delay of 0. The second letter should get a delay of a bit larger than the first one. The third one should get a delay larger than the second one. So for that what I can do is in this map function I also add one more argument, and that is you can name this anything, but I'm writing this idx, and what this is going to return is the index of that item. So after getting this index in this span, I can add a style attribute, and here we can declare a variable that is delay, and the delay I'll add in this idx times 250. After this curly braces I'll write milliseconds. So let me maximize it a bit so that it is clearer. Here we go. So the first one would have the index of 0, so the first one would get the delay of 0. The second one would get an index of 1, so the delay would be 1 times 250, that is 250 milliseconds. So that is what we are doing right up here. So in this animation I want to add an animation delay, and it comes at last, and that would be variable of delay. So now that shall work like here. So you can see that works, but still we are seeing something weird. So what weird is what we have here is, let me reload it once so that we can see what we had. Everything is in position, but that is only the animation that is working. Let me reload it once again. So yes, everything is in the position and it animates once, and so that is like very weird. So what we can do is we can cut this from here, paste it here, and then we can also change the translate to 0, opacity to 1, and change this from 2 to like this. So this is what we wanted. Here we go. So that is something nice, but still it is wrong. So we have this animation. The first one animates. This is what we want, but what next we want is, if a letter has ended up its animation, we want to stick that to the position that we had at last. So for that what I can do is we can say let me remove this now, and you can say const letters equals document.query selector all, and that would be letter. So we are selecting each and every letter. And you can say letters dot for each letter. I wanted that arrow there like this. Okay, letter dot for each letter I want to add an event listener. So I want to add an event listener to each and every letter, and that event listener would listen to an event that is called animation end. So this will trigger a function. So whenever an animation has ended up, doesn't matter which animation, but if an animation has ended up, then this function would be triggered. And in this function I'll simply add a class to this letter. That class could be active or show or anything you want. In this case I'm writing show. And now we'll come to our CSS and we'll say dot title dot letter dot show, and if this to this show I'll paste this, and to this I want the translate to be 0 and the opacity to be 1 like this. So it will start animating, and once the animation of that letter has ended up, that would get a class of show, and this show has these properties. So it is going to stick at the position. And yes, it was very fun to create this project, and if you guys also had a great time watching this video, then hit that like button down below. Make sure you are subscribed to our channel to get the awesome tutorials just like this one, and press that bell icon to get the instant notification of our latest videos. Thank you for watching.